the ACC, and I've talked to plenty of players in the ACC that played in the ACC about this. When you go up to those northern teams, I feel like I don't want to make this a regional thing, but yeah, a regional thing.
When you're going up north,
when you go up to Boston College, Syracuse, Pitt, when you go up to some of these northern teams, it's like you have to bring. I call it you have to bring your energy in a suitcase, right? When you play in a stadium, your home stadium, or even a lot of these road stadiums, in the south part of the ACC, there's electricity in the air. Usually a pretty full stadium. Usually a bit of like ready-made energy, right? Even if you show up a little down, right, kickoff happens, everybody's going nuts, you get that jolt of adrenaline, you're good to go. But when you go up north, the atmosphere isn't quite the same, right? It's you got to bring your own energy, right? It's like you got to brown paper bag it for lunch, right? You need to bring an ice pack and throw it in there. So North Carolina going up to Pitt, yeah, I think you got to bring your own energy, and that's part of the challenge of going there. Is it's you can't let yourself get punched in the mouth early while you're figuring out how to get the engines rolling. The good news is when you go up to Pitt, you get to bring Drake May with you, and it was confirmed yesterday. My expectations and my kind of heavy demands of Drake May are not too high. I want more superstar performance from him than we've seen through the first 3 weeks. I want more obvious, he's the best player on the field than we've seen in the first 3 weeks. Right? I like to use the non-fan test. You know when you watch a game with somebody that's not a football fan or not a Carolina fan, but you watch it with like not a sports fan. I like to figure out if they can identify who the best player in the game is, right? Because you've watched it. It's like, oh, I don't completely understand this sport, but that's the superstar. That should be Drake May. I need more superstar. And at different times this year for Carolina, could have been Cedric Gray, could have been British Brooks, could have been Omarion Hampton, could have been Nate McCollum. It's like, no, I want every time it to be Drake May. And I was given a bit of like my stance was confirmed yesterday. We had Tim Hasselbeck on the show. He'll be on the call for ACC Network for the UNC Pitt game. And he's Boston College quarterback, speaking of those Northern ACC teams, although it was Big East for him. NFL quarterback's been an analyst for a long time. This is what he had to say about Drake May and where he stands nationally.
I do. In fact, I'll tell you, I think he's going to be the number 1 overall pick.
Really?
I think that he is the best player that I have seen in the 15 years that I've been doing what I'm doing. I think he's that good. I think he's a near-perfect prospect. I think so in the 15 years I've been doing this, I've seen everyone from Matthew Stafford to Andrew Luck to, all the guys that have kind of been through that. I think he's that uniquely talented. I think he's got that type of, the right type of makeup for it. And so that doesn't mean that, he's never going to have a bad play. It doesn't mean, I think sometimes we fall into the trap of, hey, look, Andrew Luck was, the best prospect since John Elway. You go back, I remember watching his bowl game and, he threw one of the dumbest interceptions I think I've seen anybody make.
Near perfect prospect. The best prospect he's seen in his 15 years of doing this. He said Matt Stafford, Andrew Luck. You want to hear some other names that he put Drake May above?
Hit me.
Cam Newton.
Yep.
Joe Burrow.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to branch out, maybe Myles Garrett.
Yep.
All of these number 1 picks. Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, maybe less surprising. But that's them to be fighting words, right? If you say that around NFL draft experts, they're gonna look at you and press you on it. Like, that's a statement from Tim Hasselbeck. Near perfect prospect. And then he went into, right, and you just heard it, he went into, like, that doesn't mean he's not going to make a mistake. I agree, right? The best of the best of the best make mistakes. Tom Brady threw interceptions. But you know what? They also had the other end of the spectrum, right? That's not to say he's never going to make a bad play, but that is to say you saw superstar things from superstars, right? They go above and beyond. I want that. If you are even in the conversation that Tim Hasselbeck just put you in, best prospect of a decade and a half, I need more from you. Right? And I know that Mac Brown and Chip Lindsey, their new offensive coordinator, right? They want to emphasize the run game more, but that just means that defenses should be expending more resources, more manpower, right? Coming down into the box to stop the run, which means there should be more big plays and more touchdowns from the best prospect of the last 15 years, according to Tim Hasselbeck. Right? There's less disguises they can run on the back end to confuse you because, it's easier to count and to account for guys that have to be up taking care of the run. Get the Tez Walker stuff behind you, not as a person, but as a player, right? From a football standpoint, get that behind you. Again, we had Tim Hasselbeck on. He was talking with coaches about Tez Walker, and they were getting teary-eyed. That's too emotional to play a football game. I love that you care about him that much, but that's too emotional to play a football game.
Wrong place to put your emotion.
Yeah. It needs to be about the offense living up to the tremendous potential that only a few teams in the country, only a few teams in the last decade have had. A returning starter with that much ability at quarterback, you should be rolling, right? Because you're above Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams put up a lot of stats with USC. Right? You want to talk about being better than Matt Stafford and Andrew Luck and Cam Newton and Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence. They put up a lot of stats at their schools. They were obviously the best player on the field most of the time. And they shared the field with some pretty good players. So I like this is the I don't know. It's like the Mr. Feeney on Boy Meets World, where it's like I'm hard on you because I see your potential, right? I'm not calling you out in front of the class because you made a bigger mistake than anyone else. It's because I see more in you. For those of you that get that reference, Feeney, Feeney, Drake, if one of the best prospects last decade and a half, if not the best prospect in the last decade.
That's high praise.
Even if you're going to go ahead and say, like, conservatively, Tim Hasselbeck got ahead of himself there, a little out over his skis. Mm-hmm. Top 20 prospect of the last decade and a half.
You're still putting him up there with all the names that you mentioned earlier.
It's I don't want to Ring of Honor complex it here and go, he's not the best prospect since Andrew Luck and act like that's an insult. It's still wildly complimentary, right? Even if you're behind Caleb Williams in many people's eyes. Caleb Williams might be a generational guy. Like, that's still wildly complimentary. Being second in this year's draft is not the same as being second in last year's draft. Two very different beasts.